Of course, the proposed levy is the aspect of our package that has attracted the most community attention. I always expected Australians to ask all the hard questions about why they are being requested to step up and pay more.
We've been leading the charge in the Parliament in our negotiations with the Prime Minister and with the government to get them to look again at other places to find money.
I think this whole flood package is in a very political context. I think the Prime Minister is very concerned about going to the next federal election with the budget in surplus, and I think that's a misplaced position for her to have.
So we do have time. This is not a rush job. We don't have to make decisions in the next 24 hours. Let's get the right package for Queenslanders, Victorians and Australia rather than the right political package for the moment.
OK, well, before we look back over the week, the levy vote will be, well, Parliament sits again the week after next. How do you think it'll go? Like, Tony Windsor needs to be persuaded, so does Rob Oakeshott, so does Wilkie?
My guess is that it'll probably get up, but, you know, you've still got people in the Senate holding out for a more permanent solution to this sort of patchwork disaster relief system. Bob Katter earlier this week said, you know, he wants a more permanent system, but, you know, more in sorrow than in anger, he cast his lot in with the government. I suspect that enough people will do that to get the levy through.
Andrew, it was interesting there that he said he's had this conversation with Tony Abbott. You get the impression that the relationship is not all that flash, but not then.
Look, that's right. I was very struck by a change in atmospherics. So maybe I'm taking a few things too much out of context or whatever, but there's been an excoriating kind of contempt that Tony Windsor has repeatedly lavished on the Liberals and Tony Abbott as well in the last year, and I didn't see that coming through this time. I saw discussions with Tony and this with Tony, and on the one hand with Tony, on the other hand. And if I was Julia Gillard, I'd be a little bit alarmed about this change in atmospherics.
Still a bit of a thwat for Barnaby Joyce, though. I don't think he'll ever quite knock that.
Tony Windsor
just went right in there.
Yeah, he's a great hater, but I think if his relationship with Abbott is good, that's interesting.
Don't you think it looks like Abbott's doing some work on this?
One of the theories that was gathering strength this week actually was around Rob Oakeshott in Liberal circles. There's this kind of... a couple of people said to me, well, look, they think that Rob Oakeshott is the more likely independent to turn tail and back the coalition into government if the existing government hasn't picked up its act by sort of mid to late next year. And the reason that they think that, and I think it's a little bit pie in the sky, but is that he's getting a lot of blowback in his electorate. There's a lot of close attention being paid to what the state seats in his electorate do at the approaching
well, you know what they'll do.
Wales election.
Now, just further on the levy, the government put in some stringent oversight on the spending as a way of kind of counteracting the sense they can't be trusted with money. And so, of course, they bring in John Fahey, who's a former New South Wales Premier but Coalition Finance Minister, and that left the government open to this sort of ridicule from Joe Hockey.
No wonder the Prime Minister rang up John Fahey and said, help us to stop the waste. No wonder the Prime Minister rang a Liberal Finance Minister and said, please oversee Wayne Swan. I don't trust him with the money. If the Prime Minister doesn't trust the Treasurer with the recovery in Queensland, how can she have him deliver a budget in May? Well, we know what's going to happen. Hello, Peter, this is Julia. I need your help. We've given you an AC, but we need you to deliver a budget.
Andrew Wobb would have done that better, wouldn't he?
You've got to pay that, really, I think. Although I think 10 years ago, the then Labor opposition was giving John Fahey the rounds of the kitchen about the slight debacle that remember the wholesale outsourcing of information technology infrastructure that the Howard government attempted, overseen by John Fahey, bit of a debacle. There was a lot of criticism of John Fahey's management skills back then.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not sure it's his management skills that they want. It's the political cover that they're after.
And it'll be good, don't you think?
And I don't think Fahey's the kind of person that would cause trouble in a way that if you brought Peter Costello on board, he might. But
to be fair on John Fay, I think he is actually quite well thought of.
I think it's fascinating and an indictment on this government's record that one of the first things it must do in announcing a big program, in this case to rebuild Queensland, is that it needs to address the immediate front-of-brain thought that so many people now have, waste.
Yep.
So that really is the problem.